and reappear where it matters most. Because in January 2026, that's exactly what happened. Out in the Pacific, the USS Abraham Lincoln is running routine operations. Jets launch, radar scans. Another normal day at sea. Then everything changes. A secure line lights up on the bridge. New orders. No delay, no discussion. Sprint to the Persian Gulf. Now. Within hours, a 100,000-ton carrier strike group pivots west. Engines push harder. Formation tightens. The pace shifts from routine to urgent. But here's the question. Why this ship? Why now? The US Navy has 11 aircraft carriers, so why pull one away from the Pacific, where China is watching, and send it straight into the Middle East? That decision isn't random. It's calculated, because something in the Gulf isn't just tense, it's about to break. And here's where it gets dangerous. Intelligence reports suggest imminent threats to US forces in Iraq, Syria, and at sea. Not theory, not guesswork. Real risk. So the Pentagon doesn't wait. They move first. But moving a carrier this fast comes with a cost. Strategic gaps, global risk, and one massive question. What's worth abandoning the Pacific for? So why didn't they send another carrier? On paper, the US Navy has options. 11 aircraft carriers, massive global coverage. But here's the reality. Most of them aren't ready when you need them. Look at the map. USS George Washington is stationed near Japan, thousands of miles away, too far to respond in time. USS Theodore Roosevelt just came out of maintenance, systems fresh, but not combat tested yet, and the most advanced carrier ever built, USS Gerald R. Ford, already tied down, locked in another high-stakes deployment. So here's the problem. You don't send the closest ship, you don't send the newest ship, you send the one that can fight right now, and that leaves one option, the USS Abraham Lincoln. But this isn't just about availability, it's about capability, because this mission isn't routine, this isn't patrol, this isn't presence, this is day one warfare, the kind where you don't get a second chance, the kind where the first strike decides everything. And here's the next question. What exactly are they preparing to hit? Because whatever it is, it's protected, layered, and ready to fight back. So what exactly is waiting in the Persian Gulf? Why send a carrier built for war into one of the most dangerous regions on Earth? Look at the map. The Strait of Hormuz sits between Iran and the Gulf states, just 21 miles wide, but every day, over 20% of the world's oil flows through it. Now imagine this. That narrow stretch suddenly shuts down, tankers stop, markets spike, global panic hits instantly. And here's the problem. Iran has been preparing for this exact scenario for years. Missile batteries hidden along the coastline, fast attack boats ready to swarm, naval mines that can freeze shipping in hours. This strategy has a name, a 2/AD, anti-access, area denial. The goal is simple. Make the entire region too dangerous to enter, so the question becomes, how do you fight an enemy that doesn't need to win, just disrupt? Because Iran doesn't need to destroy a carrier, they just need to make the cost too high. And here's where it gets dangerous. Intelligence reports suggest potential attacks on US forces across Iraq, Syria, and at sea. That means this isn't just about oil, it's about escalation. One missile, one miscalculation, one wrong move, and the entire region ignites. So how does the US respond? Do they wait, or do they move first? Because what comes next isn't defense, it's control. So how do you control a region this volatile? You don't start with ships, you start with the sky. On the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, 75 aircraft sit ready, engines cold, weapons loaded, waiting. But here's the question. What makes this air wing different? It's not just numbers, it's composition. F/A-18 Super Hornets for strike, EA-18G Growlers for electronic warfare, E-2D Hawkeye for command and control, and then the centerpiece, F-35C stealth fighters. Now imagine the map again. Carrier sits in the Gulf, Iran's coastline ahead, hundreds of miles of defended airspace. So how do you enter that? Without being seen. The F-35C doesn't rush in. It creeps in, high altitude, low emissions, silent. But here's where it gets dangerous. Iran isn't blind. They've built radar systems designed to detect stealth aircraft. So the question becomes, can the F-35 still stay hidden? Not perfectly, but it doesn't need to, because detection is not the same as targeting. Iran might see something, a signal, a disturbance, but they can't lock it. They can't track it precisely. They can't fire. And that split-second confusion is all the US needs. Because while Iran is trying to figure out what they're seeing, the F-35 is already mapping everything. Radar sites, missile batteries, command centers, turning the battlefield into a target list. So the next question is, what happens when that list is complete? So what happens when the target list is complete? You don't strike immediately. First, you blind the enemy. This is where the EA-18G Growler comes in. It doesn't carry bombs. It carries something more dangerous, control over the battlefield itself. Now picture the map again. Iran's radar sites are active, scanning, searching, trying to track incoming threats. But here's the problem. They're about to see things that aren't real. The Growler locks onto enemy radar frequencies, then it floods them. Noise, false signals, fake targets. Suddenly, one aircraft becomes 10, 10 becomes 50. Nothing is where it should be. So the question is, how do you shoot something that isn't there? You don't. And this is where it gets dangerous. While Iran is trying to figure out what's real, the F-35C Lightning II stays completely silent. No radar, no signals, just listening. It tracks emissions, pinpoints locations, builds a live map of the entire defense network. And then the roles reverse. The radar that was searching becomes the target. Coordinates locked, targets confirmed. But here's the twist. The F-35 doesn't even need to fire. It passes the data back to the strike group. And now everything is ready. So the next question, what happens when the first strike finally begins? It doesn't look chaotic. It looks controlled. Back on the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, jets are already moving, engines roaring, catapults locked. One by one, F/A-18 Super Hornets launch into the sky. Heavy, loaded, precise. But here's the key. They don't fly blindly. Every target has already been mapped, every coordinate verified. So the question is, how do you strike without exposing yourself? You don't fly into danger. You stay outside it. From hundreds of miles away, weapons are released. Glide bombs, standoff missiles. They don't rush. They glide. Silent, guided, unstoppable. Command centers, radar installations, missile launch sites. All hit at once. But here's where it gets dangerous. Iran's entire defense system depends on coordination. Radar sees. Command decides. Missiles fire. Break one link. The chain collapses. And that's exactly what this strike does. Radars go dark. Communication drops. Launch sites go silent. Now imagine being on the ground, screens flicker, signals vanish. Nothing makes sense, because the attack didn't just destroy targets, it destroyed awareness. And once that happens, defense becomes impossible. But here's the problem. Even a blind enemy can still fire. So what happens when the missiles start coming back? Picture the coastline. Launch sites activate. Missiles ignite. Dozens, maybe more, lift into the sky at once. Their goal is simple. Overwhelm the defenses. Saturate the system. Break through. So the question is, can the carrier survive a full missile swarm? Around the USS Abraham Lincoln, 3 destroyers form a protective ring, a moving shield. Each one is connected, not separate ships, one system. Radars scan, targets appear, every missile tracked in real time. And here's where it gets dangerous. The system doesn't panic. It calculates speed, trajectory, impact time within seconds. Every incoming threat is assigned a response. Interceptors launch, fast, precise, relentless. Mid-air collisions, direct hits, no explosions needed. Missiles disappear from the sky, one after another, but not all of them. Some get through. Closer now, faster, more dangerous. So the question becomes, what happens if they reach the carrier? This is the final layer. Close-in weapon systems activate. Radar locks. Guns spin. Thousands of rounds per minute. A wall of metal. Anything that gets close doesn't make it through. But here's the deeper truth. Every missile launched reveals its origin. Every radar activated exposes its position, and now those positions are targets. So the next question, what does the US do with that information? They don't just defend, they respond. Back on the USS Abraham Lincoln, the data flows instantly. From aircraft, from ships, from sensors, everything connects, everything updates, in real time. So the question becomes, how fast can they strike back? The answer, almost immediately. Super Hornets turn, weapons armed, targets locked, missile batteries along the coast, hit, radar installations, gone, command centers, silenced, all within minutes. But here's where it gets dangerous. Iran's entire strategy depends on staying hidden, striking first, then disappearing. Now that advantage is gone, because the moment they fired, they exposed everything, and once exposed, they can be destroyed. Now imagine being in command. You launch an attack. expect damage, expect chaos. Instead, your systems go dark, your positions are targeted, your defenses collapse. That's not a battle, that's a reversal. So the next question, if Iran knows this, why would they risk it at all? Why even risk attacking? Why threaten a carrier you probably can't destroy? Because this isn't just a military fight, it's a psychological one. Iran doesn't need to win, they need to create doubt, claim a hit, spread uncertainty, make the world question, is the US still in control? And they've already started. Public statements, warnings, claims of surveillance, even claims of damage. But here's the problem. There's no proof. Meanwhile, the USS Abraham Lincoln keeps operating. Jets still launch, radars still scan, nothing stops. So the question becomes, what matters more, reality or perception? Because in modern warfare, narrative is a weapon. If global markets believe the carrier is vulnerable, oil spikes, shipping slows, fear spreads. That alone creates impact, even without a single successful strike. But here's where it flips. The US doesn't hide, it shows presence. The carrier sails openly, escorts visible, aircraft active, not to provoke, but to send a message. We're here. We're ready. Do the math, and that's the real strategy. Not just to stop an attack, but to make sure it never happens. So the final question is, did this deployment actually prevent a war before it even started? Last and final. Look at the situation. Missile systems ready, naval forces active, tensions rising every day. One wrong move, and the Persian Gulf explodes. But it didn't. No massive strike, no full-scale escalation, no collapse of global shipping. So the question is, why? Because the math didn't make sense. On one side, Iran's strategy, missiles, swarm attacks, area denial. On the other, the USS Abraham Lincoln strike group. Stealth fighters mapping everything, electronic warfare blinding defenses, destroyers intercepting threats. And most importantly, the ability to strike back instantly, not just at sea, but deep inland. So every decision becomes a calculation. Launch an attack, you lose your systems, reveal your positions, you lose your defenses, win a moment, lose everything after. That's not strategy, that's risk with no reward. And this is where deterrence becomes real. Not threats, not speeches, not warnings. Capability, visible, measured, proven. Because the carrier didn't just arrive, it demonstrated exactly what would happen next. And that's why nothing escalated. Because sometimes, the most powerful move in war is making sure the other side never makes theirs. The USS Abraham Lincoln didn't fire first. It didn't need to. Because in modern warfare, the side that controls the outcome doesn't always pull the trigger.